Entrepreneur, audacity, audacious. Now they're watching.
Angie Verzeletti here. Today, we are going to be talking about confidence and how to build your confidence from scratch. So when did you stop trusting yourself? Because I'm guessing that there was a moment, or maybe a few, where you didn't. And since then, you've probably been doing everything right on paper, but you are still waiting for that little voice inside you to tell you that permission has finally shown up. So I want to be frank with you. What this episode is not. It is not a fake it till you make it. It's not surface level hacks, and it's not affirmations alone. Today, I'm giving you a real 3-part framework for rebuilding confidence from the inside out. Not the version of you that's been told fake it till you make it. So personally, I have had to build confidence to take risks and start businesses, leave domestic violence, get out of rehab, start a podcast, interviewing entrepreneurs. There's so many things that I have had to build confidence with. And I didn't rebuild it from just a podcast quote or just from being like, I'm going to do this. I rebuilt it from the floor. And I mean the floor, like the lowest level of the floor was where I started on my confidence journey. So there's a myth with confidence. What if everything you have ever been told about confidence is actually backwards? Because most people think that you get confidence before you actually act. And that's false. It's not. It's the result of acting and surviving and then acting again that builds confidence. You see, confidence to do things isn't built from thinking and having the intention to do it. It's actually acting and proving to yourself that you can do it. That's what builds confidence. For me personally, I've had to build it in so many different areas of my life. You know, I've led teams in mining. I have had a corporate leadership experience, you know, different adventures and stuff that I've gone on have all helped and shaped me into the person I am today. And I remember, I'll take you back to a worse time in my life than where things are at now. But when I actually had the confidence and the courage to leave my abusive ex-partner, and I remember being terrified and physically terrified for my own safety when I was leaving this guy, that, you know, he would end up abusing me when I was trying to leave, which is something that had happened very, very frequently before. But this time I knew I was making it different. And I felt I didn't have any confidence before I did that. I was terrified. I was shaking. I felt sick. I know I didn't want to push through, but I did. And I did it. And I remember the feeling when I actually left the room and walked out, and I did it, and I just held myself so well. And after I had gotten in the car and drove away and I was free, I was out of harm's way. That was the moment when I actually felt that shift internally. And I just felt that little spark of confidence come up in me. And it told me that, hey, you can do this. And that is the after effect of acting, because confidence isn't the moment beforehand. It's when we do it, we do the thing, and then our brain reaffirms that we can do hard things. And that's what builds our confidence. Because here's what nobody tells you. If your identity doesn't match your actions, the confidence will not stick. You can act confident 100 times and still feel like a fraud if your identity underneath hasn't moved. Because you can still do things and, you know, get through stuff, but you don't actually tap into the inner part of you and reflect and recognize, your confidence might just stay where it is. And you're like, yeah, I've done this thing, but I've done it. But you have to embed the actions and really, really trust yourself and own it after you have been confident, because that's what builds it. The first thing that you need to be focusing on for rebuilding your confidence from the inside out is focusing on your identity first. Where does rebuilding actually start? Not with action, but with our identity. Get clear on who you're building confidence as, not a confident person in general, something specific. Example, I was building confidence becoming a leader and being a young female leader of a team of grown men in mining. Or when I stepped out of that into the business world and actually become an entrepreneur, podcast host, all of those things were moments where I actually had to tap into those identities and create the confidence that came with those identities. Even being able to talk on camera like I'm doing now, that just didn't happen. You should have seen me at the start. This was all, and I still don't even get it right, you know? So for me, I have had to build my confidence as someone who isn't afraid to talk openly about my past and my history and my mistakes and my lessons, because that's my whole branding, and my whole story ties into being able to share it with you and then help you uncover your inner confidence and your inner audacity, as my branding goes, obviously. For me, the biggest shift in my confidence journey has been when I've started my podcast and my business, because I went from the safety net of a job, and a job in mining that paid very well, I was very secure, to the unknown realm of business and, putting myself out there and leaning into telling a story, talking about hardship, talking about things that I didn't feel confident talking about for a long time. But I had to tap into that. I had to become the person that was able to have the identity that reflected what I was trying to achieve. I couldn't go around saying that I was a podcast host for a global podcast if I'm a podcast host, global podcast. I had to own that stuff, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do. You've got to focus on your identity and really rip into it, because it's like, who are you going to be? And you need to step into that. I cannot stress it enough. You have to step into it, because vague identities produce vague confidence. When things are specific, that's what makes it usable. I encourage you to name your own example here. What identity did you have to consciously choose during your rebuild? Because this is who you're becoming. And I really want you to tap into that, because that's what this whole video is for, right? And this framework will work as long as you know, and you can say it out loud with such conviction, that this is your identity and this is what you're going after. So step number 2, evidence stacking. This is one of my favorite parts, right? As well, just BTW, because I was a data analyst at one point and I love data. I love it because that's the thing that we actually get to look at, and we can study and understand what's going on. But without the data, we can't do anything. So once you've named your identity, how do you actually start believing it is true? And this is where the data plays into it. This is where our evidence stacking comes into it. So we need to start collecting proof that you are that person. Not big wins and not micro events, actual evidence. Every tiny action counts towards the new identity, even ones that feel too small to matter. Trust me on that. For me, when I started my journey of becoming an entrepreneur, I had this idea, and I've had this idea for a while. I was like, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. Okay, where was the evidence? There was no evidence, because I hadn't done anything. I hadn't changed my identity. I hadn't tapped into that. I'd achieved a lot on paper. It looked really good, but it actually didn't reflect what I was trying to achieve and what I was striving for. So, the first thing was to tap into that identity and really harness that. But then it was, okay, what's my output? What is the evidence that I've got to say that I am that person? Because I went through periods where I'm going to write a book and I'm becoming an author, and I was doing El Zippo writing. So I had to assume the identity of an author. And what do? They write, they sit, they think with their thoughts, they have all of these things. And was I doing any of that at that point? No. But then I learned, okay, if that's the identity I want, I need to actually produce the output. I need to stack some evidence. I need to get some data. And that's what I did. So then I looked at, okay, I'm going to do writing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a book coach. I'm going to get people involved to help me stay accountable to becoming that identity. I won't go on a tangent with that, but, having people in your corner that actually help you is sometimes like a really good push, and what will also help you stack that evidence a lot quicker. But it was the tiny moments of, okay, I'm writing. Okay, I'm doing this. I'm mapping out my book. I'm doing this. I'm reading on ways to write and things to do. I'm actually assuming the identity of an author, and I'm showing that through these behaviors and these actions and these steps, stacking that evidence. And it wasn't an easy thing, going from just I'm doing this to actually doing it. There's sacrifice. And often we don't realize how much sacrifice sometimes we have to go through to get these things, but we can still do it. And it's hard at the start, but then you actually get to the point of, nah, I like this. This is good. And when you see that data stacking up, oh my God, do you feel like you're on fire? It's wicked. Confidence is built the same way that trust is built with another person, through small, repeatable proof, not one big action. We don't meet someone and then just instantly say, hey, do you mind looking after my house? And, while you're at it, here's the keys to my safe. If you need to use my car, here's my car. Oh, by the way, this is the lock to da-da-da. No, we don't do that. We don't dive into our deepest, darkest secrets. Or maybe you do. Maybe you trauma dump on people. I don't know. Not here to judge. But we don't just instantly build trust with people. It takes time. And changing your identity takes time. And building your confidence to do that takes time. But you just got to focus on those small, repeatable actions, on things that you can do to say, hey, this is the person that I'm becoming. And then from doing that, that is how you rebuild your confidence from scratch. So I encourage you to look at, while you go through this, what is the first piece of evidence that you've collected on your journey? And it doesn't have to be a massive thing. It can be a small thing, right? And often they are. For me, it was writing one word, one sentence rather, on my Word document for me writing the book. Just one sentence. And I had to get that into the routine because I would get so overwhelmed with writing a book. I don't know if you've ever written a book before, but it is not an easy process. And to become an author, I actually had to make it so granular that it was almost ridiculous for me not to be able to do that. And then as soon as I started stacking that evidence and seeing more sentences coming onto the page each and every day, I was able to say, yeah, I'm an author and I'm soon to be published author as well, which is even more exciting. But it doesn't just happen overnight. Let me tell you, everything counts. Every small little granular action counts. And that's how you stack the evidence. And step 3 is embodiment and the inner critic. This is a biggie. You got to watch out for when doubt shows up, because it will. And it's not the end. It's actually good. I generally, we hate it, right? Because who wants to have doubt? But we do. We're human beings. We can't get, doesn't matter. But when you do have doubt, if you have the evidence to say, hang on a second, I've got this. Look at the evidence. Your brain can't argue with those doubts, right? Your brain will be like, we know that. No. But it's oh, hold on. If we have the evidence suggests that we do have that, right? Embodying our new identity helps us build confidence. When we start moving and speaking and make decisions as the person before you fully feel ready, that's what helps you build confidence, because you're never going to feel ready to take the risk, to start a business, to change your behavior on this, to stop doing this. You never feel ready, because ready isn't a feeling, and you could be super prepared and still mess it up, So when you embody it and you work on that inner critic and say, hey, I know that we're doubting this because we're going through this period of change. I'm still going to keep going because I'm stacking this data. And this is helping me be confident because I'm saying that I'm going to do something and I'm showing that I'm doing it here. That's what's happening, because our brains update our identity based around our brains update our identity based around our behavior, not the other way around. So for me, transitioning to becoming an author or leaving the domestic violence relationship and actually having standards and personal boundaries and things wasn't something that just come quickly. No, I had to actually show that I was someone who wrote every day. I had, I knew what an editing process was. I knew what this was. When I was leaving my abusive ex, I knew how to have boundaries. I knew my self-worth. But that stuff didn't just happen overnight. And I wasn't confident in myself overnight. It took years and years and years, and so many granular steps in different areas that allowed me to now stand really strong in myself, knowing that I can step into just about anything and I'll probably be okay. It might not be great. Probably won't be great. Probably be pretty shit to begin with, but I'd be okay because I've built that inner confidence. And it's tapping into that embodiment of someone who is really courageous and who has audacity that can just lean into things. And when we focus on our identity, that's what we create. But how do you do that? You have to address your inner critic directly. The voice that says, who do you think you are, is not wisdom. It's a survival mechanism. And I think it's really important that you know that, because our brains want to keep us safe. So you have to thank it and say, thank you for wanting to keep me safe. But actually, I'm going to lean into this for you and I'm going to do it because it's actually going to help me become someone better. I thank you, brain, but we're still doing it. We're having audacity. That's what we're doing, right? And you don't have to silence it. You just learn to stop outsourcing your self-concept to it. One of the ways that you can do that is you can reframe. You're not rebuilding what you've lost. You're building something that you never had the right foundation on. Now, that means you're rebuilding your identity. You're creating that confidence. You're creating that foundation to actually say like, hey, everything I do from here now, this is me having confidence. This is me leaning into my inner critic and saying like, hey, I know this is a bit of a wild ride, but just hang on, we'll be okay. I'm going to be confident with this because I've got the data to prove it. I know the identity of where I need to go. I'm stacking that data and I need you to just hang on for the ride while we get to the other side. Okay, so where do you actually start tonight with zero preparation? There is one thing, and I'm going to encourage you to do one thing today. It's going to be so concrete and small. And the whole point is proving that this framework works in 2 minutes, not 2 months. Pick one identity declaration. Not an affirmation. I'm someone who shows up even when I'm uncertain. For example, I am someone who knows how to set a boundary and keep a boundary in place. I am someone who is an author. I am, you fill in the blanks. You with me? Right? And then find one piece of evidence, just one super, super small piece of evidence from the last 7 days that actually proves it. Tiny little things count. For me, I had a call with my editor. I can look at the million sticky notes that are sticking on my wall right now, mapping out my book. For me, that's the data. So I encourage you, pick one identity declaration. I am someone who, then find one piece of evidence, just one, however small it is, and focus on that. You're not starting from zero. You're starting from everything that you've already been through. And that's not nothing. That is the foundation. And when you want that unshakable confidence, you have to work on the foundation. You have to work on your identity. You have to stack the evidence. You have to tell that little inner critic to just hang on while you're doing some stuff. Because he will learn to shut up, or she, he, it, thing will learn to shut up, and you will be able to do more and more and more. But you've just got to learn how to let it sit in that bitter, icky uncomfortableness until you actually take the thing. So that is how you can build confidence from the inside out. This identity first rebuild is the whole foundation of the Audacity shift that I've created, because I know how hard it is to go through all of this stuff by yourself. Trust me, I have reinvented myself so many times, and I know that it's so hard. The brain is resistant to change. We don't like it. It's not fun. And I don't want you to feel like you need to do it alone. But if you want someone in your corner, you can book a call with me. I will be totally open to it. I even just want to hear from you about what identity that you're taking up and changing. Just one. And then tell me what piece of evidence that you have as well. I really want to know. And I'll see you in the next episode.